Hi everyone, it's Rax. I've leveled 7 classes to 100, and actually I've got my fastest leveling time down to 6 hours and 10 minutes, starting fresh with no pre-crafted gear. And I wanted to make a video because every time I do these runs, people are genuinely confused or interested in certain things that happen during the run. And I think if I explain these to you and give you some ideas of what I'm thinking about in my mind, I think it might help you in Diablo 4. So the main things that people are interested in are, why do I do certain activities in a certain order? Why am I able to go fight the curator so many levels down, to fight Elias 40 levels down, to do nightmare dungeons 50 levels lower without even the right tier of gear, just with sacred gear, and beat them easily? And the answer is right here at the blacksmith and at the occultist, right here in Kmart. Having the right ideas with interacting with these two NPCs, if you know what you're doing, you can instantly take your character from 0 to hero as a god, even with shit gear, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. So what I've done here is I took off all my regular gear and I just gambled for a bunch of shitty yellows or shitty legendaries. They're unrolled, they're untempered, everything like that. They're just plain old crappy items, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm going to do here. Before I start with that, though, the one thing that I do want to tell you is the way that I always start off my journey. How do I even get to the point where I have a full set of yellows? I just go do Helltide. And one of the best things to do in Helltide, I believe the boss is right here, is just to go to the boss and see if people are plugging the boss and just contribute. Just fight there, kill the boss. She's going to give you a lot of Iron Wolf rep, and she's going to drop a lot of items. And if you have the materials to contribute one of the 3 things, the 3 summoning materials, you should do so. Because when you contribute one of the materials, you get better loot. You don't get extra loot if you contribute 2 or 3 of them, so you don't have to plug all 3 of them, but you can if you want to. But if you plug 0, your loot's going to be worse. So it incentivizes you in the right way to contribute. And if the boss, obviously, if nobody's doing the boss and you can't solo the boss quickly, then just ride around and do events and pick up whatever, and everything will be just fine. After you do after you do Helltide and you get through World Tier 2 and you kill the Curator, I always do Nightmare Dungeons. Okay, I don't have any keys, but you go do 1 Tree of Whispers to get your first Nightmare Dungeon key. Okay, and then you would go run this. Why do I do Nightmare Dungeons instead of Helltide until 100? That's for 2 reasons. 1, it gives you more XP. And people try to tell me, well, no, Rax, if you just do Helltide and you just plug the Mine Cage, the Helltide is more XP. No, it isn't. And the reason why is the events within Nightmare Dungeons, the side events, the cursed chests, the cursed shrines, all of those things, even the little events from the little prisoners laying on the ground that say, help me, and it's like 1 minute of waves, those pay over 100 million XP per hour. You're not going to get that anywhere else. And it gives you extra rewards. It gives you obols. It gives you flowers. It gives you gems. It gives you items. You can't beat it. Then people say, well, Rax, those events are so rare. You're fishing for things that never appear. They appear all the time. You just got to look for them. But the other reason why is Nightmare Dungeons are the only way to level up your glyphs. Your glyphs are insanely important for how strong you are. And then people say, well, Rax, no, the way that the game has changed, the Paragon glyphs are not really that important. I can just do Helltide the whole time. No, they are important. They're still a huge source of your power. Now, I don't want you to tell you how to live your life. If you love Helltide, Helltide is a good option. But if you aren't doing Nightmare Dungeons, I mean, you can get your glyphs to 21. They need to at least be 15 so you get the extra radius for the power. Keep in mind that that's a huge way to power up, right? Okay, now let's say we played Helltide and we killed the boss a million times and we have this full set of loot, and I watch Rax play and he spends 60 seconds in town and then he goes fights and fights the curator, and he kills the curator in 5 hits with like a shit character. How the hell does he do that? Okay, well, first of all, it's a lot easier to power up an alt than it is the very first time playing through, because the magnitude of your tempering recipes is better. So, for example, if I'm going to put a tempering recipe here, you can see that the rank of this tempering thing is legendary. I would move my mouse over it, but then it's going to go away. You see where it says legendary? When you first play through, you might not have the legendary one. You might have the magic one or the rare one, which is fine. That's what you would use. It's just that's why you don't feel quite as powerful the first time through. Similarly, when you play through the very first time, you probably don't even have the right codexes, let alone a high rank of the codexes. But as you level more and more characters, if you did not know, this yellow or gold border means that you have a perfect codex. This is 15 of 16, not quite there. But the other ones, most of them are all perfect for me. That's another reason why you would feel weaker on the very first time. So, when you're going through, there's a couple of things that you need to solve for. The first thing is you need to get as much damage as you possibly can, and this is very easy to do. I'll show you in a second. The other thing you need to solve for that people underestimate is your resources. Every leveling build for every single class, pretty much without exception, feels way better if you have resources to spam your skills, right? When you're resource starved, that never feels good. So I put a massive emphasis on that. And then there is resistances and armor to solve. Now, we know that the armor cap is 9230 in the end game, but before then, it's dynamic. It's always going up and up and up, and we don't exactly know what the right armor levels are, and you don't have to. I'll show you how to solve it every time for every build with no thinking, which is what I do in my runs. And then the very last thing is our resistances. Now, when you go fight the curator, I don't put like any resistances on my gear. I put no thought into it. But when you go fight Elias, you at least want capped fire res. And then in World Tier 4, you will absolutely solve your resistances then. So for Curator, you won't need it. Elias, you at least need Fire Res, and then you need resistances in World Tier 4. The reason why I explain it that way is because we're going to be given a choice in the tempering to just buff ourselves or to buff resistances, and we're going to choose to buff ourselves because that's plenty good enough. Okay, that's enough theory crafting. Why don't we actually try to fix up a character really quickly, and I'll tell you exactly what I'm thinking. So let's take it step by step. The first thing that we talked about was damage. It's very easy. This works for every single class, no exceptions. Your weapons and your rings and your amulet and your gloves, everything on the bottom, everything on the right, and the gloves can take an offensive tempering thing. So that's what you use. Offensive, offensive, offensive. We're going to do this one last. Offensive, 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 offensive. That's everything. If you just stack these, you're going to annihilate everything in the game, and this is why I killed Curator in 5 hits. So we throw the first one in here, and you'll notice there's 4 choices. Damage, damage to crowd controlled, damage to close, damage to distant. So you don't need to be a rocket scientist here to notice a few things. First of all, damage to close and damage to distant have the highest magnitudes. So for example, if you're playing like Bash, where you always have to be near them to do damage, then by far the best rolls to get everywhere are damage to close. It's simple. And damage to distant sucks for you, and if you don't apply a crowd control, then that sucks for you. So usually I play, let's say this guy was playing double swing Dust Devils. So for the majority of the time, I will probably be close to them, especially on the bosses, just chopping them with my double swings. Sometimes my Dust Devils fly across the room and hit enemies and kill them nowhere near me. So there are instances where damage to distant would be good. And the first one, percent damage, of course, always works. It works for all kinds of damage. People ask me, Rax, is that only physical damage? No, it's for all damage. So that's a good one. So what I'm thinking here on my build is damage to close would probably be the best. I wouldn't mind maybe 1 damage to distant roll when my tornadoes go everywhere. And percent damage would also be a good option. So I picked this, and let's just roll it and see what happens. We got damage to crowd controlled, the worst case scenario. I don't want this. So let's just go again. Damage to close, it's a minimum roll, but this early in the game, I would just take it. The magnitude of these damage increases is enough to carry you, as if you get what you want, just settle for it every time. So I'm very happy with that. When you are on regular gear or sacred gear, you only get to pick 1 tempering on your gear. And when you're in the end game, you get 2 of them. That's why I brought a 925 sword. So when I look over here, you have to pick 1 from each category. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get the natural finesse. We're just going to get the percent damage here. And then we're going to go over here. And since I'm playing Dust Devils, then I'm going to go for the Dust Devil powers. Any of these would be good. And then later on in the game, since you can only do this in World Tier 4, you need to understand that there are certain synergies, which are explained in things like your Maxroll guide, which are very important. For example, I believe the Dust Devil size gives you, it's like 1/10 of your Dust Devil size in multiplicative damage up to 30%. So what that means is, excuse me. What I'm thinking is that's damage with berserking. Let me start over. There's a power that gives you 1% increased damage for your Dust Devil size. But Dust Devil size is capped at 100%. So we need, as some combination here, we need to get 100% Dust Devil size to get that multiplicative damage from the legendary power. And then another thing that we need to do is we need to get 300% damage while berserking to get that multiplier as well. So that's why when you reach World Tier 4, instead of doing natural finesse, which we've been using the whole game, when you actually have your Paragon board, instead you would go for berserking finesse for damage while berserking until you had 300% damage while berserking. So the only thing I'm trying to tell you here is in the end game, you get 2 rolls, and there are certain synergies which are going to make you way stronger. So the player that just does natural finesse forever, and even in World Tier 4, versus the person that knows in the Paragon board that there's synergies with damage while berserking up to 300% and Dust Devil size up to 100%, is going to give you a massive advantage. These are things why, when you see people doing so much more damage than you and you can't understand why, it's because of mechanics like this. So let's just take this and let's just try it again. Let's try to get damage while berserking. You only get so many tries. Okay, damage while berserking, that's easy. Thank you, YouTube. And then we go to Dust Devil stuff. The Dust Devil damage, ironically, is actually the worst thing. It's way better to have the Dust Devils cast twice, or certainly to get the 100% increased Dust Devil size for the synergy. So this is a fine roll. we could use this. It's not too bad, and then we move on with our lives. So I wanted to showcase one endgame item. Okay, back to the baby stuff. Remember, when we only have one reroll on our baby stuff, and we don't have a Paragon board, it's very easy. Natural Finesse. Close is good. Percent damage is good. Good enough. Nice. Next one. Notice how quickly we can do this. We're just looking for, okay, percent damage. It works. It works in all scenarios. I'll take it. Now, I would recommend you still going for Natural Finesse on your rings. If your build is completely resource starved, you could do this. Resource generation or resource cost reduction. When you start building these onto your rings, then again, when you're leveling up, you have a ton of resources and the game feels fun, right? So you do have a little bit of a choice here. Early game, nothing beats just doing a shitload of damage and just killing the boss instantly. So this is what I'd go for. Another percent damage, whatever, I'll take it. Our magnitudes are a little bit lower, but at least our damage always applies, even if the Dust Devils move away from us. Now here's our one damage to distant roll that I was going to allow ourselves in case the Dust Devils fly away from us and kill something. I don't think that's too bad of a roll. That's fine. But probably now with how many regular damage rolls we had, and we only have one close roll, probably on the amulet and the gloves, we probably want to go close if we can get them. So let's see. Damage to distant. I definitely don't want two of those rolls. Damage to distant, again, I hate my life. Okay. Damage to distant. Blizzard, what is wrong with you? And damage to distant, it's actually bricked. Gonna go install PoE 4 times in a row. Nice game, Blizzard. What you can do in this situation is go back to the other thing where that still has some more temperings. We'll put our damage to distant on our amulet and grab something else on this one. Damage to crowd controlled is garbage. Don't want that. Damage to close. So we move the damage from distant to our amulet, and now we have close. So hopefully we can get close on our gloves to round this out. I think you get the idea now. First try, easy. And now we have 125 to close, 195 to close. Let's just call it 5 to make it easy. Let's call it 280 to close, a little bit less than 280. We have 106 to distant, and then we got 78 damage and 42 damage all the time. What's that, 120? We even have some damage while berserking as well. The magnitudes of how much more damage we have at this low level now are just godly. This is why I killed Curator in 5 hits. So now, when we go to tempering, we've done the whole right side, we've done the whole bottom side, and we've done the gloves. The hat, the chest, and the pants are super easy to understand in the early game. I throw it in here, I go defensive. Remember how we were talking earlier about how you really need to fix your resistances at the end of the game? In the early game, you don't need to do this. First of all, you're not going to have the tools available to you to cap the resistances anyway. So you're not going to be able to do that. But what you can do instead of rolling a resistance on each of these pieces is just go for worldly endurance. And the thing that you want is life. When you put life on these 3 pieces of gear, you're going to be tanky. That's good enough. So that's what I do. I just go worldly endurance, and I want life. I don't want dodge. I don't want armor. I'll show you why in a second. Armor. I'm crying. No. Life. Ah, that's nice. We go to the chest pieces. Worldly endurance. I want life. No, I don't want armor. By the way, tempering is pretty cheap in the early game. A lot of the other things in the game cost $1 million everything. These cost rawhide and veiled crystals and no golds. You can temper to your heart's content. Don't be shy. Okay, still looking for life. Oh, we got it on the last roll. God, this game's giving me a heart attack here. All right, and then we got life. Perfect. So, life, life, and life. These 3 life rolls that we just got, probably more than double your life. no matter how good your gear is in the early game. Maybe not in World Tier 3, but in World Tier 2, it will. And that's way better than trying to cap these resistances that you can't cap anyway. That's why we make it simple. We're going to solve armor in a second. The only thing that we have not tempered now is our boots. And it's pretty simple. You just try to get movement speed on your boots. I just don't think too much about it. I just go with mobility. Maybe there's a utility thing that's really good for you. I just try to get movement speed. Movement speed is godly. Okay, movement speed after killing an elite. That's not great, but whatever. We go with that. And we're done tempering. We put all of our offense here in all our gloves. We're going to kill the boss instantly. Boss can't kill us because we got life, life, life. And now we're going to move faster. Easy. Okay, that was the first step. Now we go over to our friend, the Occultist. Enchanting item, especially in the early game when we're not super min-maxing, is super easy. Just when this is when we're re-rolling an affix. Just throw the item into the thing and just take a look and see if the two stats make any sense at all. If they make sense, just go to the next item. That's literally how much I think about it. And by the way, when you're going through getting your gear, one thing I wanted to illustrate is notice when you get any yellow item, you have 2 stats. And when you get any legendary item, you get 3. So it's much better to start with a legendary item because you get an extra stat on every piece of your gear. That is significant. Okay, so let's just use plain Jane common sense to look at this. Life, good. Damage over time, bad. I'm throwing dust devils that don't do damage over time. This stat sucks. Click it, re-roll it. Fury on kill is good for sustain running through. Great option. Your generic stat for your class is also godly. Always. Both of these are good options. I'll take the strength because the strength is going to help me on bosses more. Done. Next. Strength, life. Perfect. Next. Damage over time, bad. Life, good. Get rid of damage over time. Give me something useful. Strength, good. Strength, life, fine. Strength, poison res, fine. Our resistances, well, I guess this one is capped. This is a good demonstration. I can tell instantly that this poison res roll is good for me. Now, how did I do that in 1 millisecond? When I mouse over this, I'm looking at the top number tells me the poison res is capped. So now I want to know, am I super overcapped on poison res? Meaning I could roll this off and get something else and it would help me more. If you look at the very bottom number, the minus 2.2%, that means I'm 2% over the cap, which to me translates into I pretty much hit the cap perfectly. I'm at 72 poison res instead of 70, but that's almost exactly 70. So that means this poison roll is doing a very good job. It's getting me just to the cap and not too much over it. So I don't need to re-roll it. Then I might say to myself, well, what if I'm going to go fight Elias? Well, if I'm going to go fight Elias, who does fire damage in the second capstone, if this fire number was very, very low and I didn't have another way to get fire res, then I would trade the poison res for fire res. Or I'd go get a fire res elixir. But this strength is helpful. Poison res gets me exactly to the cap. Fine. Again, the whole point is, do these affixes do something for me? And if they do something, it's good enough. I think what a lot of people do is every time they get 2 or 3 upgrades, they spend a lot of time trying to min-max their early characters. You want to know what's way better for you? Just blast. If you got anything useful, just hold forward. Keep attacking. When you get to World Tier 4, that's when you optimize your gear. Because you don't need to optimize it. As long as you temper correctly and put on the aspects correctly, it's not going to be a big deal. Okay, so then we go to the next thing. Poison res, again, the combination gets us perfectly here. We just went over that. Strength and lucky hit. Lucky hit doesn't really do anything for me here. So let's roll this off and get something else. Oh, life. Okay, sure, why not? The minus resource cost is a good option as well. But I'm playing hardcore. I don't want to die. This one, lightning res. Okay. Now, here's a perfect example of the opposite. I'm 13% over the cap. So if I rolled this lightning res off, I would still be at 67% lightning res, which is almost capped at 70. So this one is not really doing anything for me. And counteroffensive is a pretty damn good passive for barbarians. I take this in my build. So this is the one I'm going to roll off this time. Movement speed is good. Attack speed is good. I'd rather just move faster. There we go. 67. Plenty good enough. Fury per second and life. That's beautiful. Lightning res and life per second. I would not roll off this lightning res now because I'm not even capped. Life per second always sucks. Like on pretty much every build, I always roll this off. Life is good right there. Okay. Strength, lucky hit sucks. I'll take the crit chance. Why not? Next one. Impairment reduction is terrible, and so is life per second. So this chest piece blows. Guess we get rid of the impairment reduction for the strength. And the final thing, lucky hit. These two pieces are just dog shit. Roll this off. It doesn't matter. 17 cold. This is my lowest resistance. Take it. There we go. Now I'm not going to die. Beautiful. Okay. So now we've tempered our gear and we've re-rolled our gear. Simple logic. What sounds like it works for me and what doesn't, exactly that is exactly what you need to be doing. The final step is to put the powers on for your build. So let's go through that step by step, try to do it quickly. So I play the Dust Devil Barbarian, and if you did not know this, if you put an aspect on a two-handed weapon, it gets double the power versus a one-hander or a ring or an armor slot. If you put it on an amulet, it gets 1.5 times the power. So my best two aspects have to go here and here, and my third best aspect has to go here. So it's pretty simple. You go here, and you would just look up the Maxroll guide and put the correct powers where they tell you to. But obviously, I'm going to put the Dust Devil powers, since that's my whole build, onto my two-handed weapons. So Shout spawns Dust Devils. After doing Fury, you spawn Dust Devils. Whirlwind leaves behind Dust Devils. This doesn't help me because I'm using Double Swing. And then the Double Swing one. So I'm going to put Double Swing here. Okay. And then I'm going to put the Shout one here. And then I'm going to put the other one on my amulet. Now, one thing to consider, one little trick that I love to do, there are two powers that you should have memorized in the game. Juggernaut and Disobedience. You should know these. And the reason why is because they solve armor for you. So, remember how I told you, against the Curator and against Elias, I couldn't tell you how much armor you actually need? That's because I don't care. Because I put Disobedience or Juggernaut somewhere in my build while I'm leveling up, and it's just going to solve armor for you. You don't need any armor rolls. You don't need any armor tempering. Just put it somewhere, and then you never have to think about it ever again. Now, if you're really, really scared, you can put Juggernaut on your amulet, which again gives you 1.5x the value of Juggernaut, and it's single-handedly going to solve armor for you. So just to demonstrate that, if you didn't want to put the third Dust Devil power here and you wanted to put Juggernaut here, okay, boom, look at my armor, it doubled, right? Now it says 63% because I'm a very high level, but the cap would be, you would be at the cap for 85%, nearly guaranteed for all content that you were doing if you put a Juggernaut here every single time. It's just as simple as that. And that's what I do on my characters. On the rings, they have something very special, which I think are very underrated. For rings, they're the only piece that can get resource powers. Can you put resource powers on amulets, by the way? You see? Okay, you can also put it on the amulet, but I usually put something like Juggernaut on there. Anyway, back here we go to the resource powers. And I am always berserking or trying to be in the end game. So this, when you have 6 fury per second while berserking, is an excellent thing for me to put on in the end game. Another one that's good for most classes is Umbral, if you have it. And what Umbral says is when you crowd control enemies, you get more resources. So as long as you have any crowd control, anything, a slow, a chill, a stun, a freeze, anything, then it's going to be giving you your resources back. So I usually like to go with Umbral and Vocalized Empowerment or Berserk Fury or something to solve my problems there while I'm leveling. Gloves in your weapons can also have one, so let's get the other Dust Devil power that we didn't grab yet. And by the way, you can tell that I already have these 2 Dust Devil powers because of the warning sign, so we want a new one here. Let's say you're not following a guide. Let's say, Rax, I don't want to follow a guide. I don't want to read it. I just want to kind of YOLO and do whatever it is that I want. Fine. Close out of this and just kind of look at the aspects and see if they help you offensively with your Dust Devils. Critical strikes with core skills. Okay, so double swing is a core skill. Give you 25% attack speed. This is very nice. So you maybe say, okay, that sounds great. I'll take that. Fine. Okay, charge calls forth 4 ancients that do more damage. Well, I would have charge on my bar if I was playing that. You could take that. That's fine. Leap, upheaval, whirlwind, 60% chance to summon an ancient, hammer the ancients, berserk, ripping. Kind of just read through and see if any of these actually might help you. Here's one that's generically good for a lot of builds. Elements, 29% increased damage for a certain damage type for 7 seconds. And Dust Devils and Double Swing is physical. So half of the time we'll have 30% increased damage. It's like a 15% increase in damage. Okay, fine, take that. It doesn't need to be rocket science, right? Something that sounds like it works for your build usually does. The boots are really simple. You take something to move faster. I really like Wind Striker. You crit, you get movement speed. Almost every build crits sometime to keep this up. So I like Wind Striker a lot. Makes a lot of sense to me. And then here we just take 2 defensive powers or 3 defensive powers on the pants, chest, and helmet. That's where we get our defense. We don't need you never need Disobedience and Juggernaut. You need one or the other. Disobedience doesn't have the drawback that Juggernaut has, because Juggernaut makes your evade longer, but Juggernaut usually gives you more armor. So if you use Juggernaut, then you never have to think about it ever again. A really good one, if you use a basic skill, is Might. 20% damage reduction is crazy. Start off on the boss, hit him with your basic skill, double swing. 6 seconds later, hit him again with your basic skill. 20% DR is insane. It's used a lot. Another really good one is Undying. When you cast any skill, you get 2% of your life, double it if you're on low life. Very, very good way for you to sustain. And then again, if you don't want to follow a guide, just look through the defensive powers, look for anything that is going to help you. Every point of fury you generate gives you Fortify. This is another very popular one that people like for barbs. Every class has some different ones. Okay, so what have we done? We have tempered all the offensive stuff here, focusing mostly on damage to close because of our build. Then we tempered the life here, here, and here, and we tempered movement speed here. Then we re-rolled all of our gear, and we put one nice stat just wherever it makes sense. It's not rocket science. 1 or 2 re-rolls per item, and you're done. Then we put the aspects on our gear, the legendary aspects that we had. And then if you're low level and you don't have the right aspects, just put on anything that makes any sense. If you don't have anything that makes any sense, skip it, and the tempering will carry you. That's fine. The last step is to put in the gems. And that's pretty easy. You just go here, you craft your, in the beginning, you probably only have your baby gems. You always put rubies in your armor for more life. Early game, I really like to put diamonds over here because diamonds are all resist. If you're not fire res cap for Elias, it's rubies again. Rubies in here to cap your fire res first, because that's the damage that he does. And if anybody's going to kill you, it's going to be Elias. And then what you put down here is different for every single build. So for example, rubies give overpower damage, not that popular this season. Amethysts give damage over time. That would be very good if you're playing something like Firewall. Okay. Emeralds give you critical strike damage, not bad, especially if you crit a lot. Topazes give basic damage for bash. Sapphires give vulnerable damage if you're always applying vulnerable. With the exploit glyph, a lot of classes do. Ultimate damage, this is pretty much never used. And then life on kill, also pretty much never used. So for this particular example, maybe we have our exploit glyph. And so for our exploit glyph, we are going to be doing the vulnerable, which is sapphire. So we just throw some sapphires in there or something. Or we do the critical strike damage one. And that's it. This barbarian, if you were like level 25 and you did this on just basic little gear and you went in and fought in the curator, you would annihilate him. I can guarantee you. You would have no paragon points and you would have half of your skill tree. You might not even have your key passive at this point. It doesn't matter at all. Because you have such high magnitudes for damage to close and overall damage, and you have the right legendary powers, he can't kill you because you have too much life here. Your armor is godly because you have the Juggernaut here. It's over. And then if you just hit him with a basic attack once every 6 seconds, then your might is going to keep you alive. And as you keep hitting him, your undying is going to keep you at full health. You don't even need your potions. So then what I do, after I beat Curator, I go to World Tier 3, I do a Tree of Whisper to get enough Sigil Powder to make a Nightmare Dungeon key. And then I start doing Nightmare Dungeons. And then at 35, you should have an inventory full of Sacred Gear. You would strongly prefer it to be Legendary than Yellow because you get an extra stat. And then what I do is, let's say this is a sacred item, and this was my old item, right? So when I get the sacred item at level 35, and I'm going to switch it, at 35, I put on a whole new set of gear, whatever I got. So if this was a sacred weapon, I put it on, and then I mark it with this little flag. And let's say I found this ring, and I found these boots, and I found this weapon. Okay? I would mark these 4. And what I can do now when I am building my character is I know that I have a sacred item in these 4 slots, and I know I don't have a sacred item here because I haven't swapped them yet. And so I would do the same process, go over here, put on the tempering, re-roll 1 affix that's bad, put back on the power that I just took off, and then put the gems back in. And then I'd do another dungeon and be way stronger. After you do 5 dungeons, all of my gear now is sacred, and I have redone it. And now it's time to go kill Elias. That's already good enough. The only thing that it would benefit you to have a very high item power within the sacred realm, like, what is it, 600 to 750, whatever the range is the main weapon that you're swinging. So if this is the main weapon that you're swinging, and you have a 610 sacred item, if I started to get obols, what I would do is I would go to the gambler and I'd say, listen, it doesn't matter what the item power is for anything else, but it does matter for the weapon that you're swinging. So maybe I'd go two-handed sword, and I'd say, okay, well, I'm in World Tier 2, so this is a bad example. It's just giving me 600 gear. But if I switched to World Tier 3 and I was ready to go to Elias, then I'm looking for something much better than 610. That will give me a massive damage increase. So just to showcase this, if I go here and I gamble this, okay, a 715 from a 600 is a 600 damage increase. So then I'd swap it out, and this is the only thing I would be paying attention to making sure that I had a good one before I fought Elias. And that's why you can kill Elias 30, 40 levels down. Most of your sacred gear is pretty shit. It's just whatever you picked up first, except for the main thing that you're swinging. But you tempered it correctly. You re-rolled it to something that made sense. You capped your armor with Juggernaut, and you capped your fire res before going in, and you drank maybe a good defensive potion or an offensive potion, and he's going to die instantly. You move to World Tier 4, same thing. I unfavorite everything, and then I run a couple Nightmare Dungeons. At 55, you can put on Ancestral gear, swap it out, put on a basic set of 800 gear, whatever. Again, look for a very good weapon. If you go kill the world boss, he might give you a godly weapon. Then when you get like a 900 plus weapon, switch it, retemper it, re-roll it, da-da-da-da-da, and now you're a god until you're 100, and you don't need to mess with it. When I'm 100, then I spend the time grabbing all the greater affixes that I have. Then I put them in, re-roll them, da-da-da-da-da. But I spend very little time in town. I only did it once to fight Curator, once at level 35 for my initial sacred items, one more time before I go fight Elias to get the best weapon possible and finishing touches on my gear, one time at the beginning of World Tier 4 at 55, one more time at about 70 when I have all of my gear, fine touches, and try to get a 900 plus weapon, and then I never am in town ever again. I never retemper it one more time until I'm 100. If I get a greater affix item that's really nice for me, I don't even bother with it. I just throw it in my stash and I'll say, listen, I'll just fix it at 100. I don't need to spend the time to fix it. You're already so strong that you can murder everything. All right, well, I don't know how long this video was. I was trying to make it not that long, but I wanted to give you an actual demonstration and tell you everything that I'm thinking while I'm putting these characters together. This is why I'm able to do it so quickly, because I just have these basic ideas. Offensive, 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 close, 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 one distant, that's fine. Juggernaut on the amulet. I don't care about resistances here. I care about fire res here. I care about all res in World Tier 4, etc. I don't need to explain it all again, but when you think about it in simple terms like that, then it becomes very easy to put up a character, go fight Curator, and kill him 30, 40 levels down, and he just dies in 5 hits. I hope this video helped you. If it did, let me know. And by the way, I read your guys' comments. If it did help you, I'd be interested to know, like, what parts of it helped you. Was it the whole thing? Did you like the actual demonstration, or do you like the conceptual things, or what is it exactly that is helping you guys? Because the entire reason I make these videos is for you. I want you to dominate in Diablo 4, and I absolutely think that you can. Just want to give you every hint that I know. Many more videos are coming. Thanks for watching.